Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back to the hot flat plains of Mesopotamia. The sun's just beginning to peek over the rooftops of Ur, and you're already awake. Not for battle, not for exploration, not for destiny. No, you're off to work. Because this isn't a story about kings or warriors. This is the story of you, a humble Sumerian accountant. Your job writing numbers in clay and praying no one sneezes on your tablet before it dries. You shuffle out from under a coarse linen blanket. Rub your eyes still sticky with last night's reed-scratched dreams, and immediately regret touching your face. There's dust everywhere. It's in your sandals, your bedsheets, and let's be honest, your soul. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is in the comments. I always love seeing the wide, sleepy world out there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge down the narrow alley behind your house, dodging puddles left from last night's ceremonial water dumping. A priest threw a bucket off the ziggurat to bless the streets. It mostly blessed your neighbor's laundry. Around you, is waking up. The scent of baked barley cakes mingles with the less pleasant aroma of donkey traffic. You pass the potter's shop where a new apprentice is already getting yelled at for uneven rims. It's a symphony of mundane bustle. Even the pigeons sound annoyed. A child runs past trailing a toy wheel made from a broken bowl, and you manage not to trip over him. You wave politely to an elderly fish seller who may or may not be sleeping with your aunt. She waves back with a dried eel. This is your kingdom, not one of glory or conquest, but one of order, repetition, and careful arithmetic. And your first battle of the day breakfast. You stop at a street vendor with an uneven table and pick up a warm barley cake and a small jug of watered beer. It's not bad kind of yeasty with a faint hint of regret. You chew mechanically while watching two merchants argue over who owns a clay pot. The pot breaks. Neither claims it now. Classic. A light breeze kicks up the sand and blows your hair in your face. You try to tuck it behind your ear, but end up smearing barley paste across your cheek. This is fine. You are a professional. Arriving at your workplace, a squat building near the shadow of the grand ziggurat, you breathe in deeply. Ah yes, the sacred scent of damp clay, old sandals, and whatever that one guy brought for lunch. You still haven't forgiven him for the fermented onion stew incident last week. Inside it's dim. The only light seeps in through small slit windows. Reed mats cover the floor, and your colleagues are already there, hunched over tablets, their backs forming the ancient version of an open-plan office. You nod to Dumuzi, who always carves too fast and breaks things, and to Taram Kubi, who once counted a shipment of chickens as goats and never lived it down. You settle at your workstation, a low table, a stylus, and a fresh slab of clay, still slightly damp and cool to the touch. It's oddly soothing, like the first page of a new notebook, if the notebook could be used as a weapon in a tight hallway. Today your assignment is simple, or so they say. You're recording labor payments for the temple. That means calculating how much grain beer and wool to allocate to the workers, and trying not to shortchange anyone important. Last time someone miscounted a priest's ration, there was a formal curse involved. It only caused 3 people to vomit and 1 to go bald, but still. The stylus fits between your fingers like an old friend. You start marking the numbers. 100 workers, 10 days, 3 portions per day. You press each symbol slowly, methodically. Each stroke has weight, both literal and metaphorical. You are the guardian of order, the preserver of barley disbursement, the calculator of wool socks, and then you hear it. A sigh, long, dramatic. 2 desks over Ninsen has discovered a mistake. Again, she waves a tablet in the air like it's been personally offensive. It probably has. Someone, she says, counted a half day as a whole. Again, you all look at Basie. He shrugs and mutters something about cosmic alignment. Historians still argue whether Basie was a true mystic or just trying to dodge extra work. You lean back, stretch your sore legs, and listen to the building creak under the heat. In the distance, the temple drums begin preparations for a midsummer rite. You'll be required to help inventory the sacrificial offerings later. Goats, grain dates, and one very nervous-looking duck. Outside the city hums with its ancient rhythm. Children chase stray dogs. Potters spin wheels. Bakers slap dough into ovens shaped like upside-down beehives. No empires rise today, no kings fall, but the beer will flow, the goats will be counted, and somewhere someone will misplace a decimal that doesn't even exist yet. You take a moment to look at your hands, dusty, ink-stained slightly, beer sticky, and smile. You, dear accountant, are the backbone of this forgotten civilization, and you've only just begun your day. The morning sun climbs lazily higher, and so do the smells. The stone floor beneath you starts to warm, and with it, a fresh bouquet of damp sandals, sweat-dusted linen, and someone's fish lunch, reheating itself via passive solar power. You suppress the urge to gag, which feels like a small personal victory. You step outside for a moment, claiming you need better light, which is code for I'm 5 minutes from yeeting this tablet into the Euphrates. The alleys are alive now, vendors calling out their wares in a half-sung, half-shouted chant. Barley flat cakes, 3 for 1 jug of beer, fresh goat cheese. Only slightly hairy. You hear a potter arguing over whether his newest jar resembles the goddess Ninhursag or a lumpy toad. Honestly, it's both. Back at your post, you settle into the soothing tedium of ration math. 37 temple guards. Multiply that by 2 portions of beer per day. Divide by 5-day weeks. Adjust for feast days, which you still think are made up on the fly. You pause to double-check a figure, then smudge it out, and redo the entire column because you forgot to account for the new guy with the limp. Remember, Adal Nasir grumbles behind you errors. Reflect not just on your tablet, but on your soul. Classic middle management, you breathe deep. Clay dust fills your nostrils. It smells like stress and damp basement. Still you focus. You press your stylus gently but firmly into the wet surface shaping the wedge-like cuneiform that has become second nature. It's not art, it's not war, but it is precision. That matters, sort of. A breeze trickles in through the window, offering a brief moment of relief. You close your eyes and let it wash over you. A bird chirps nearby, probably nesting in the roof beams again. Last time it stole a reed stylus and impaled a dried fig on it. You're still not sure if it was an omen or lunch. You look around the room. Every scribe is locked in their own silent war with their tablet. You spot Ninsen again, her hair pinned up, with what might actually be a fishbone and Dumuzi, who's already on his 3rd attempt at the same payroll list. He makes a show of being careless, but he's good, too good. You suspect he's trying to get promoted to chief scribe before you. You won't let him. You return to your calculations with renewed determination. Every numeral, every mark, is a small act of rebellion against the chaos of life outside these walls. In this moment, you are in control. You determine who gets their goat feed, who gets extra beer, and who accidentally gets a duplicated barley ration that might cause an audit. Of course, even in this bubble of order, interruptions lurk. A loud knock rattles the doorframe. You flinch and accidentally jab your tablet too hard, leaving a deep gouge. You curse under your breath, gently PG-13 style, and set the stylus down. A delivery boy from the granary enters, holding a basket of newly dried tablets and a scroll of requests. He's no older than 10, barefoot, and smells vaguely of smoked fish. Delivery for Scribe Cuppe, he announces, mispronouncing your name like always. That's me, you sigh, taking the cracked basket and nodding him toward the water jug. The poor kid looks like he's sweated out his body weight. The tablets are warm and still shedding dust. You sort through them like ancient paperwork, which technically they are. Most are grain shipments. One is a complaint about someone stealing temple oil, which, if true, is both stupid and slippery. There's also a personal note tucked in a small thumbprint-sealed slab from Sumerian, the scribe in the next room over. She thanks you for your timely assistance with that barley discrepancy and asks if you'd like to join her and some friends at the river this evening. You blink. Social invitation. A faint flutter tickles your chest. Romance friendship. Or maybe just a shared hatred of ledger errors. Historians still argue whether that clay note was flirtation or bureaucracy in disguise. You tuck the tablet into your sash and suppress a grin. Focus. Back to work. There are sheep to tally. You crack your knuckles, stretch your neck, until it pops and return to your current task-matching rations against temple worker roles. You catch a duplicate entry someone named Ururu appears twice under different spellings. Classic Ururu. As you erase the duplicate line, you hear a grunt behind you. It's Adel Nasir again. He drops a stack of wet clay slabs beside you like an overworked librarian. Your handwriting's slipping, he says. Too many upward wedges. Makes the barley look fat. You smile politely. You dream of pushing him into a grain silo. Lunch arrives with a welcome distraction. A serving woman lays out trays of lentil stew, date cakes, and lukewarm beer. You gather your bowl and sit near the window, where the sun now lights the room in warm amber. Conversations flicker up. Dumuzi insists he once met the king's tax collector and lived to tell the tale. Ninsen accuses Bazi of carving cuneiform love poems into the temple wall. Bazi denies it, then recites one from memory. O you who counts goats with fierce eyes, grant me a glance of mercy, which only makes it worse. You quietly dip your bread into the stew and try not to laugh. It's good, a little gritty, but edible. You imagine what your life might have been if you'd been born a merchant, or a baker, or worse, a soldier. You'd miss the routine, the quiet control of numbers, the small joy of a well-balanced column. Across the room, Sumerian walks past. She nods, you nod. It's a moment so understated it might not even exist. The bells outside chime faintly some signal from the temple that means return to work before someone yells. You stand, roll your shoulders, and pick up your stylus. There are still 3 shipments to verify, 2 salary errors to correct, and 1 goat counted twice because it wandered out of its pen, circled the temple, and came back in the other side. Bureaucracy never sleeps, but maybe, just maybe, it daydreams. You start the afternoon with a fresh slab of clay. It's warm from the sun and still pliable, perfect for today's assignment livestock inventory. Again, because when you're a Sumerian accountant, livestock is your coworker, your recurring antagonist, and occasionally your lunch. You press your stylus into the clay, recording the temple herd's details with the same bored reverence you might reserve today for resetting your email password for the 10th time. There are sheep, there are goats, there are more sheep. And for some reason, someone submitted a line item for one large suspicious bird. You flag that for follow-up. The work is repetitive, but there's something meditative about it. Every wedge mark you press into the clay feels like a small triumph over entropy. You tally, subtract, adjust. The numbers line up, kind of. Make sure to count the twins Ninsen calls from across the room. Those sheep are breeding like bureaucrats at a wine festival. You roll your eyes, but check the birthing logs anyway. Sure enough, 5 new lambs this week. That means updating the wool estimates and milk rations again. You sigh deeply, a sound that echoes like a hollow amphora in your chest. Still, you're grateful it's not auditing month. That's when everything turns to chaos, and someone always loses a stylus up their sleeve. The door creaks open. A tall man in dusty robes stumbles in, looking both panicked and smug. "I have urgent tallies from the northern pens," he shouts, waving a wax-sealed clay tablet like a sacred relic. You recognize him, Namu, the shepherd who always insists his flock is spiritually exempt from taxation. His eyes dart around, daring someone to question him. Nobody does. He's exhausting. You accept the tablet and scan it. Predictably, his report lists fewer sheep than last month, but somehow the same amount of wool. Did they start shearing each other, you mutter? He doesn't laugh, not even a chuckle. Just stands there awkwardly before muttering something about celestial cycles and backing out. You add his questionable numbers to the master sheet, carving each one into the clay with a grim sense of purpose. This apparently is what divine order looks like, one slightly bloated sheep count at a time. You were halfway through the wool calculations when a loud crash erupts from the hallway. Dumuzi bursts in, covered in soot, and holding what appears to be a partially scorched stylus. "The kiln's on fire," he says deadpan. You blink again. He nods. Turns out clay doesn't like being dried next to incense offerings. You rise to your feet, wipe your hands on your sash, and follow the smell of burnt sage and panic into the outer courtyard. A group of novice scribes is fanning smoke away from the kiln using palm fronds and a sense of urgent futility. The fire's already dying down. No real damage. Just one melted amphora and a few singed eyebrows. You return to your desk as calmly as if you'd just taken a bathroom break. Your stylus is where you left it. So is the clay. You resume your work, the scent of smoke now permanently embedded in your clothes. Again, the sun is beginning to shift westward, casting long shadows across the ledger hall. Light flickers through reed-matted windows, creating stripes on the clay tablets like ancient barcodes. Outside, a donkey brays in protest at its own existence. You glance at the backlog of assignments and realize you've got one more job before the days over goat hide reconciliation. A tedious task that involves making sure the number of goats slaughtered actually matches the number of hides submitted to the temple storehouse. You flip to the hide log and immediately notice the problem one of the tanners has been rounding up, generously. Like 5 goats died, 8 hides appeared generously. You pause. You consider your options. You could report him. Or more efficiently, you could just fix it and pretend the goats multiplied briefly in the afterlife. It's not like anyone double-checks these things, except of course Adal Nasir. You glance toward his desk. He's asleep, upright, eyes open but totally gone. It's impressive. You tiptoe past him and adjust the numbers, just a bit. A soft cough breaks the silence. You turn. Sumerian's there again, holding a tray of fresh clay. She places it gently beside you. "This batch is smoother," she says. "Less grit. Thought you might appreciate that." You smile genuinely. "Thank you." She lingers a second longer than necessary. You feel your ears getting hot. You look back down at your ledger and nod toward her clay. "Nice compression," you murmur. It's the closest you've ever come to flirting. She grins and walks away. You take a breath. You're going to remember that moment tonight, probably while trying to fall asleep during a chanted hymn to Enki. Back to work. You finish the goat hide reconciliation and begin marking up a tablet for temple staff shifts. You pause halfway through and wonder, do the gods care about temple janitors getting overtime? Historians still debate whether the Mesopotamian divine hierarchy cared at all about daily wages, or if it was purely a mortal concern. But you care. You carve their names carefully, spacing the symbols just right, making sure the sweepers and grain haulers are listed in full. Someone has to remember them, someone has to write it down. The day's nearly done. The light in the room turns honey-colored, and even a dull Nasir finally blinks. One by one, scribes pack up their tablets, wiping styluses clean, stretching tired arms. You follow suit. You place your finished work on the drying shelf, each one a small brittle legacy. Another day done. Another 100 numbers recorded. And you, the tireless mathematician of sheep and sacrifice, head for the exit with the posture of a man who has earned his porridge. Outside, the sky begins to blush with the colors of oncoming dusk. You stretch your arms overhead and yawn wide enough to frighten the pigeons. And tomorrow you get to count sacks of barley again. The next morning begins with the same familiar blend of ache and repetition. You wake up groggy, your joints stiff, from sleeping on a mat that feels like woven regret. Your dreams were filled with goats wearing sandals and arguing about taxation. You really need a hobby. You step outside into the dawn. It's warm already, with that sticky kind of heat that makes you question your life choices and your deodorant, which in this case is a mix of myrrh and denial. A neighbor nods to you as he unloads a cart of dried figs. He offers one. You decline. You've seen where his figs are stored. You make your way down the familiar path to the scribal office barefoot, because your sandals cracked yesterday and you haven't gotten around to bribing the leather worker. The dust cakes your feet, instantly a gritty reminder of how dry the season's been. When you enter the office, the day's assignment is already waiting for you. Grain tallies for the upper temple storerooms. You groan internally. You did these last week, but apparently someone miscounted, or more likely misplaced 5 sacks of barley. And now you're the one picking up the stylus. This means only one thing: sheep math was just the warm-up. Today it's numbers all the way down. You sit, take a slow breath, and run your fingers over the new clay tablet. It's a good one, smooth, firm, barely any rocks. A sign the pottery team's getting better. Or maybe they just had fewer rats falling in the clay pits this month. Either way, you're grateful. You begin by comparing yesterday's counts with today's delivery logs. Each sack of barley weighs roughly 30 kilograms, give or take a few stray pebbles or a rat skull. You see that room 3 in the temple received 100 sacks, but the delivery boy only signed for 110. Somewhere 2 sacks vanished. Maybe the wind took them. Maybe a priest needed extra porridge. You flag the discrepancy with a quick wedge mark and a note pending divine clarification. This is your polite way of saying, "Not my fault." Already chasing ghosts, Ninsen asks, dropping onto the mat beside you. You glance up. either ghosts or priests with really good snack habits. She chuckles and tosses you a date. You catch it with one hand. Not bad for someone who hasn't had breakfast yet. You eat it while squinting at the grain logs. The sweetness sticks to your teeth. An hour later, your back is sore and your eyes are blurring. You take a break and wander into the archive room, a narrow chamber filled with wooden shelves sagging under the weight of thousands of tablets. This is your temple's memory. Every harvest, every sheep birth, every debt forgiven, and every debt mysteriously adjusted. You run your fingers across the rows and find one from last spring. It's your own writing, slightly neater than today's. You smile. Your clay handwriting has deteriorated slightly. Probably stress, or old age, or that time you slept on your tablet by accident. You pick out a matching grain log from last year and cross-reference it. Sure enough, this same priest has been short 2 sacks of barley in spring for 3 years running. You stare at the number and murmur, consistency is suspicious. Historians still argue whether these recurring shortages were organized theft, divine sacrifice, or just bad math. You decide not to care and mark it down as a recurring irregularity, which is just fancy scribe talk for I'm too tired to fix this. You return to your desk where Bazi is now practicing cuneiform. Flourishes on a scrap slab. He's added little bird wings to each numeral. You stare. What is that? Symbolic embellishment, he says. The gods appreciate flair. You're about to respond when a shadow falls over your desk. You look up to see Adal Nasir, arms crossed, eyebrow raised. Not a good sign. Do you know, he says slowly, that we've had 3 miscounts this month? You nod. 2 I fixed. 1 I'm still investigating. He squints. And your conclusion? You gesture to your tablet. The numbers fear me. They obey, eventually. He grunts unimpressed and moves on. You let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. The man can smell weakness and unbalanced ledgers. You work through lunch, finishing the barley reconciliation with a quiet sense of triumph. The tablets are lined up like little earthen trophies on the drying shelf. Some are curved from overbaking. One has a small cat, a paw print on it. You decide not to fix it. It's probably better than Basie's bird numerals anyway. Later that afternoon, you're sent on an exciting field assignment, double-checking barley deliveries at the temple storerooms. This means you get to leave the office. This also means you have to deal with Kuzu. Kuzu is the temple's official barley porter, which is a fancy title for guy, who moves sacks and grunts a lot. He greets you with a single nod and gestures at the stack of barley piled in one corner. Count 'em, he says, then promptly sits down and starts carving something onto a date seed with his thumbnail. You sigh and start counting. 1, 2, 3. The numbers blend together quickly. It's hot. You're sweating. The sacks all look the same. You lose track halfway through and start again. Kuzu offers no help. At one point, you're sure the same sack moves slightly, just to mess with you. Eventually, you finish. You compare your count to the delivery tablet. Off by 2 again. Where are the last 2 sacks, you ask? Kuzu shrugs. The rats took them. Both of them. Very organized rats. You make a note of it, return to the office, and enter the figures with the resigned air of someone who knows they'll be asked about it again in a week. Still, there's something satisfying about it all. The way the numbers line up when they want to. The way you can press your will into clay and make it stay there more permanent than breath, more honest than memory. As the sun sets, the shadows stretch longer and the chatter quiets. You hear someone humming near the back of the room, low rhythmic, like the sound of water hitting baked stone. You close your tablet and set down your stylus. The room is dim now, the last light filtering through reed mats, catching dust motes mid-air. You stretch again, pop your back, and head toward the doorway. Behind you, Basie whispers, to no one in particular. I think numbers are like stars. Fixed but flickering. You don't know what that means. But for a second you kind of like it. It's audit day. You knew it was coming. There was a certain tension in the way Adal Nasir's brow furrowed yesterday, and the sudden appearance of those pale, bespectacled scribes from the Royal Bureau. Nothing good ever starts with a pale man holding a checklist. You arrive early, hoping to stake out a calm corner before the chaos begins. No such luck. The room is already crawling with auditors, stern, sandal-polished, ink-stained men who look like they haven't smiled since the last lunar eclipse. One of them is holding your ledger. You resist the urge to snatch it away and run screaming into the street. Barely. Instead, you paste on your most bureaucratically neutral face and approach. Ah, the lead auditor says, you must be Kuppy. We've heard you're thorough. That pause, that long, pregnant pause. You could plant lentils in it and harvest twice. You nod. I do my best. The numbers appreciate structure. He doesn't laugh. Of course not. They begin their inspection, one tablet at a time, one wedge mark at a time. You sit beside them answering occasional questions like a defendant at trial. Why are there two different totals for the beer ration here? One's what they were supposed to get, the other's what they actually got. After the priest's niece visited with a donation. Noted? It goes on like this for hours. Sweat pools at the small of your back. You mentally rehearse your resignation speech. Something dramatic involving a broken stylus and a goat on fire. You never actually say it, of course, but still, it's nice to dream. Midway through the session, a debate breaks out between two auditors over whether you've used the proper symbol for woolen tunic or mistakenly documented ritual apron. You explain calmly, too calmly, that the temple issued tunics for practical labor, not ceremonial duties. Historians still argue about that distinction, one murmurs. You grit your teeth. Well, I argue about rent, and I'm still here. The younger auditor snorts, then pretends to cough. Eventually, the lead auditor sighs and hands your ledger back. Passable, he says. You've never hated a word more in your life. After they leave, you collapse into your chair and rub your temples with dusty fingers. Around the room, the other scribes are slowly resurfacing from their own inspections, comparing notes like survivors of a shipwreck. Dumuzi got caught skipping line totals. Ninsen apparently filed her livestock entries under the wrong god. Basie had a personal poem carved into the margin of a salary log, which he claimed was meditative. He now has to scrub 22 tablets. You glance at your drying rack. All your tablets are still there. No breakages, no confiscations. A small miracle. Later that afternoon, Adal Nasir strolls by, arms crossed behind his back. Like he invented organization. He pauses by your desk, nods once, and mutters, "You didn't embarrass me." High praise. You consider writing it on a clay tablet and hanging it on your wall. The rest of the day feels oddly light. Audit complete the mood in the office, shifts less tension, more quiet pride. You even hear someone humming a tune that suspiciously sounds like the inventory song from the New Year's festival. You decide to take a walk to clear your head. The alleys of Ur are bustling the sun, casting long shadows between crumbling walls. A potter's apprentice is hauling a cart of unfired clay bowls. Children run alongside it, shouting something about fish stew. You drift toward the edge of the marketplace, where the scent of spiced lentils and honeyed dates fills the air. You buy a sticky fig cake from a vendor with more flies than teeth. It tastes like sugar and regret. Delicious. Just beyond the market square, the city slows. You pass by the edge of the temple gardens, a small walled area where herbs and offerings grow, tended mostly by elderly priests and overly enthusiastic teenagers. You pause at a fig tree watching two goats try to headbutt each other into enlightenment. They fail. You sit on a sun-warmed stone and close your eyes. The breeze rustles the reeds. Somewhere a temple drum thuds in time with your breath. You let it all go, the audits, the sheep, the ghostly missing barley. Here for a moment you're just a man under a tree eating cake and pretending you're not covered in clay dust. Then a voice, trying to escape. You open one eye. Sumerian is standing nearby, arms folded, smirking. You scoot over and offer a corner of your stone. She sits. You eat the rest of the fig cake in silence, trading glances. She smells like ink and something vaguely floral, maybe crushed myrtle. You handled the audit well, she says after a beat. Better than Dumuzi. He tried to bribe them with honey beer. You snort. Of course he did. The two of you watch the sun drift down toward the rooftops of casting the mud brick buildings in gold. It's peaceful for a city built on trade tax and temple gossip that's saying something. As the shadows grow longer, she stands. Back to it. You nod. Back to it. By the time you return, the office is quieter. Most scribes have gone home. A few clay tablets still sit on the drying rack like little tombstones for forgotten math. You pick up your stylus one last time and start on tomorrow's assignments. Just a few line entries, just enough to say you didn't quit early. Outside the city sings itself to sleep with the sound of sandals scuffing stone, the hum of night insects, and the occasional argument over who stole whose goat. You finish the last entry, all tallies verified. No discrepancies, no miracles, just numbers, just life. You smile. It's enough. The next morning starts with a bang. Literally. You're barely through your second bite of barley cake when a loud crack echoes from the storeroom behind the office. You freeze mid-chew. So does Dumuzi, who drops his mug of watered beer. Ninsun drops her stylus. Bazi, however, simply mutters. It's probably the inventory spirits again, and returns to tracing stars onto his tablet margins. Turns out it's not ghosts. It's just a shelf collapsing under the weight of overlogged grain tablets again. This happens roughly once a month, usually when someone decides to double stack the barley ration columns. It's the Sumerian equivalent of a spreadsheet crash. You and two others are promptly assigned cleanup duty. The toppled tablets lie scattered like ancient, extremely dense confetti. Some are cracked, most are smudged, and one has what looks suspiciously like a boot print in it. You try not to panic. You pick up a slab and blow the dust off. Barley logs for room 2, you read. Oh, Ninsun sighs. That was mine. You glance at the faint wedge marks, barely legible now, thanks to the crash and the mystery boot. You can still read most of it, you offer. I had just balanced it to the grain. She clutches her heart like a playwright in mourning. You spend the next 2 hours carefully brushing off tablets, sorting cracked ones into salvageable and please don't make me rewrite this piles. It's hot, sweaty, and deeply undignified work. You get clay dust in places clay dust should never be. Adel Nasir passes by, once mutters something about storage protocols and keeps walking. You mentally curse him using extremely PG-13. Terms like pestilent sneeze and donkey-breathed micromanager. After cleanup, you're finally allowed to resume your actual job. which today means calculating beer allowances for workers building a new temple annex. The priests, in their infinite wisdom, have decided that anyone moving bricks deserves at least 2 mugs of beer per shift plus a date cake on the new moon. You respect that. But it means a whole new set of tables to make. You carve the figures slowly, deliberately. Each worker's name, each shift, each mug of beer, and its barley equivalent. It's deeply satisfying. You might not have the power to move bricks, but by the gods you can calculate how many bricks a man can carry after 2 mugs of brew. As you finish, Sumerian drops by. She's holding a curved tablet with an odd smirk on her face. "Want to see something ridiculous?" she asks, eyes gleaming. You nod. She hands you the tablet. You scan it. At first, it looks normal, a temple receipt for a shipment of wool, but halfway down, someone's made a drawing in the margin. It's a sheep wearing a priest's headdress, holding a stylus. You blink, then snort. "Who?" "I think it was one of the novices," she whispers. "Apparently they got bored during night shift and started doodling livestock doing paperwork." You try to stifle your laugh, but it's no use. Soon you're both shaking, with silent giggles, shoulders hunched to avoid attracting attention. Bossy glances over scowls like an offended owl and goes back to his numerical harmony chant. You hand the tablet back. "Tell them I approve," you say. Very lifelike stylus. After lunch, more lentils, more mystery stew, fewer teeth. You're sent to help with backlog documentation for temple expenditures. You find yourself in a side room sorting payments from 3 months ago, each one more confusing than the last. There's a receipt for 700 fish. There's a note that simply says lost to wind. There's an entry for 20 units of silence which you're not even going to ask about. One particularly faded tablet catches your eye. You squint at it. It's a transaction for blessing services rendered, and it includes both incense and something ominously labeled sacred mud. Historians still argue whether sacred mud was ceremonial or just particularly wet. You jot a sarcastic note in the margin. "See highly blessed puddle." The hours pass. Outside, the sun dips lower. You stretch, hearing several vertebrae pop like overcooked lentils. Your hand is cramping from stylus grip. You contemplate the irony that you're one of the few people in history whose calluses come from carving the word bean over and over again. Just as you're packing up, Bazi approaches with a wild look in his eyes. "Did you hear?" he says. You raise an eyebrow. "Please tell me it doesn't involve goats or visions again." "No, there's going to be a ledger update." You blink. "A what?" "They're changing the symbols," he says, almost giddy, "standardizing the cuneiform for bundle, jar, and pint. It's official." You stare at him, then at your pile of tablets. "Do we have to rewrite everything?" He nods, way too excited for someone delivering what amounts to a death sentence. You let out a groan so deep it could qualify as seismic activity. Around the room, other scribes are getting the news too. Groans spread like ripples in a clay pond. You sit down, hard. Your hands find your face. "This," you whisper, "is how civilizations collapse." You hear someone whisper behind you, "I liked the old jar symbol. It had character." And just like that, your future is clear, retranscribing the past one slightly different jar at a time. Still, as the room empties and the last of the sunlight slants through the window, something softens in you. Even in this mess, even in the absurdity, there's meaning. There's continuity. There's you. You gather your things slowly. Another day done. Another tablet full of barley counts, misnumbered goats, and sheep in hats. You walk home under a sky streaked with copper and ash. Kids run past you barefoot. A woman sings to her bread as it bakes. You pass a shrine and toss a small pebble into its bowl, whispering a prayer not for glory, but for enough clay tomorrow and enough patience to match it. And as the breeze brushes against your face, you realize you're going to remember that doodle sheep forever. You arrive at the office the next morning to find someone crying. Not weeping, not wailing, just a steady, quiet, sniffling from the corner of the scribe room. You tiptoe in, drop your satchel with the gentle grace of someone who doesn't want to get involved, but already knows he will, and peek around the tablet rack. It's Lugal the junior scribe. He's fresh out of training, barely knows his barley from his bronze, and today he's curled up beside a cracked tablet like a puppy who's just peed on his master's sandal. You approach cautiously. "Tough morning." He lifts his red-eyed face. "I reversed the beer and fish columns on the priest's monthly offerings." You wince. "So instead of 5 pints and 2 fish." He nods. "I gave him 2 pints of beer and 5 fish." He sniffles. He doesn't even like fish. You resist the urge to laugh. You remember your own first big mistake. The time you forgot to subtract a festival bonus, and the scribe spent 2 days high on bonus mead. You made a name for yourself. Unfortunately, it was that guy. You pat Lugal on the shoulder, fix it. Say it was a clerical mix-up, blame Demuzi. He looks up, eyes wide. "Can I really do that?" You smile, "Absolutely not, but it'll make you feel better." You leave him to it and settle into your desk. Today's task, finalizing the quarterly sheep report. Again, you thought you were done. But then a new shipment of sheep arrived last night, 17 more than expected, and one of them has 3 legs and a really aggressive limp. You carve their tallies onto a fresh tablet, double-checking your column totals, with the cautious dread of someone who's been burned before. Sheep, you've learned, are the most statistically inconsistent animal in the city. One moment there are 60, then 59, then 61. Then someone claims the 61st was always there, and now you're hallucinating sheep. As you write, Bazzi drifts past your desk. You hear, he says, grinning like a man who knows too much. You squint. If this is about moon cycles and goat behavior again. No, there's a royal census next month. You blink. That's actually serious. Whole city, you ask? Whole region, he says. They want new head counts for livestock grain workers, even scribes. You groan. Of course they do, right after the symbol change. Historians still argue whether those timing decisions were bureaucratic incompetence or celestial punishment. You lean your forehead against the tablet. I'm going to die buried under barley math. But still, the census is important. It's how the king tracks taxes, resources, and probably potential rebellion, though the only rebellion in lately was Ninsen refusing to use the new stylus rack because it felt wrong spiritually. You spend the afternoon preparing pre-count sheets. You revise inventory templates, reformat tablet headers with the new cuneiform standards, and send 2 novice scribes on an emergency run to the stylus maker because someone snapped 10 of them trying to carve on clay that wasn't moist enough. Outside the streets buzz with pre-census murmurs. Merchants whisper about hiding goats. Families joke about counting grandma twice. You overhear one teenager ask if they can list their pet frog as a dependent. Honestly, you'd allow it. By late afternoon, your head is a fog of numbers, your fingers sore. From grip your clay, smudged with sweat and effort. You retreat to the courtyard for air and find Sumerian already there, sipping something from a cracked ceramic cup. She raises it in greeting. Fig wine, she says. From the northern traders, supposed to help with accuracy. You raise an eyebrow, drinking on the job. She smirks. We're not paid enough not to. You sit beside her. The breeze carries the scent of dust and damp pottery. Somewhere a child is trying to teach a goat to sit. It's failing, loudly. Are you ready for the census, she asks. Mentally nor physically, also no. She laughs. Well, you've survived audits, flaming kilns, and beer math. This should be easy. You sip from her cup. It burns. You didn't say it was fermented fig wine. Details, she says. You're the numbers guy. Later, you head back inside and do the only thing that makes you feel in control. You audit yourself. You pull out old tablets and begin checking your past records line by line, date by date. You know most of them by heart. You find 3 minor errors. 1 major one. You fix them all. Not because anyone will check. Not because anyone will care. But because it's your work. And because someday, someone, maybe a scholar, maybe a goat with good taste, will dig up your tablet and wonder who you were. Maybe they'll see a neat row of wedge marks, all lined up, no smudges, no overcarves. Maybe they'll think this person cared, and they'd be right. Before the end of your shift, you receive a strange request. Adal Nasir wants you to teach a mini lesson to the new scribes about error management techniques. You suspect it's punishment disguised as praise. You also suspect Bazi suggested it. Still you agree. You gather a few broken tablets, pull up a chair, and explain quietly, evenly, how to spot falsified rations, how to detect duplicate names, and how to handle the ever-infamous phantom sheep. One scribe asks, how do you know when a goat is lying? You look them dead in the eye. They always lie. They nod as if you've just shared a sacred truth. By sunset, the room is quiet again. A few scribes still scratch away, but most have gone home. You finish your notes, wrap your stylus, and stretch your sore back. The sky outside glows a dusty rose. A few temple bells chime in the distance. You take one last look at your ledger, balanced, clean. Just the way you like it, you walk home through streets that have seen centuries' feet cart sandals, the soft shuffle of bureaucrats and barley alike. The air smells like crushed grain and burnt offering. And in your pocket, you carry a small note from Sumerian. A doodle of a sheep wearing glasses. You smile the whole way home. The day starts with a bribe. Well, technically it's a gift, but let's not pretend. You arrive at your desk to find a small basket placed carefully beside your stylus. Inside, 1 date cake still warm, 2 sprigs of mint, and what appears to be an oddly shaped fig carved with a wedge mark that loosely resembles your name. There's a small tag pressed into a clay shard for favorable barley placement. Humbly Urgamil, livestock quarter. You sigh long and slow. Not because you're surprised. No, this is about the 4th bribe. Sorry gift you've received this month. You're the senior scribe managing temple rations. That means your name sits between a lot of mouths and a lot of barley. Oh, you eat the cake anyway. Across the room, Ninsen sees the basket and raises an eyebrow. You raise your cup of watered beer in mock toast. Barley bribe, she asks. Technically fig diplomacy. Classy. You shake your head, half amused, half annoyed. The funny part, it doesn't work. You've logged corrected and denied more generous gifts than you can count. But the offerings keep coming, and if you're honest, the fig was delicious. You return to your work prepping the upcoming monthly audit for the Temple of Enki. This is no small feat. The Temple of Enki is the most chaotic of the 3 major religious centers in Ur. Part of it is their divine focus on water and wisdom. Mostly, it's their chief priest who insists on receiving all his data in duplicate 1 clay, 1 oral, 1 spiritually interpreted. You roll your shoulders and dive into the records. Grain shipments from the docks, wool receipts from the outer storerooms. There's a suspicious gap in oil deliveries, and someone has recorded the same 5 goats 3 times under different names, Baal 2, and creatively definitely not Baal. You scrawl a sharp note in the margin, pick 1 goat. 1 name. This is not theater. Basie wanders past and peers over your shoulder. You're still using sarcasm in official entries. It helps me sleep, you say. He shrugs. I still use threatening metaphors. My last audit summary said, like balancing reeds in a storm. That explains a lot. The room fills with quiet scribbling. A few novice scribes work in the corner, trying to keep up with new regulations. Since the royal census announcement, everyone's been tense. You hear someone muttering multiplication tables under their breath like a prayer. At midday, a runner bursts in with a tablet bearing the seal of the high priest himself. It's rare for messages to be sent directly to you. You wipe your hands, accept the tablet, and read. The barley allocation for next month must be reduced by 1/5. Temple orders. Adjust accordingly. Do not notify the workers yet. You blink. 1/5. That's massive. That's dangerous. You imagine trying to explain to 200 laborers why their daily beer ration is lighter. Again, no barley, no beer, no peace. You write a reply carefully worded, non-insubordinate, but full of sharp edges, reduction noted. May Enki bless your wisdom and your security personnel. Historians still argue whether this barley reduction was due to poor harvest's temple politics, or just someone misreading a dream involving frogs and sandstorms. You start recalculating the rations, redoing the columns on fresh tablets. The new math stings. There's no elegant way to take food from people who already work under the sun 12 hours a day. You glance at the workers' names. Men you've never met, women who sweep temple stairs, teens, hauling bricks, and you feel the weight of the wedge marks. They're more than symbols, they're people's stomachs. Later that day, Adel Nasir calls for a full meeting of senior scribes. You gather in the back chamber, a space normally used for drying tablets and gossiping in hushed tones. Today it feels like a war room. We are preparing for a citywide audit, Adel Nasir announces. Royal inspectors will arrive next week. All ledgers must be aligned, all discrepancies resolved, all bribes returned. A few scribes cough awkwardly. You say nothing. He gestures to a stack of new clay slabs. You'll each receive a temple section to review. No exceptions, no complaints. You draw the short straw outer livestock enclosures. The worst kept, least documented, most accident-prone area in the whole system. The last guy who audited that section came back with a limp and a 1,000-yard stare. You spend the afternoon inspecting the outer pens. You count sheep, you count goats, you count 2 animals you're pretty sure are just large, hairy dogs. 1 goat escapes mid-count. You chase it. You fall in the mud. The goat watches you smugly. You log it all the miscounts, the broken gate, the feed shortages. You cross-reference it with last month's tablet and realize they've been feeding 15 animals off a ration meant for 8. That explains the attempted mutiny last week when the grain cart arrived late. You return to the office, exhausted, mud-streaked, and smelling like your least favorite part of the temple. You sit down and begin writing your report with the solemnity of a funeral priest. Later that night, you linger in the archive room checking old ledgers. You find one of your first tablets, crooked symbols, slightly too deep wedge marks, but clear, honest. You smile. Then you hear her. Still working. Sumerian steps into the room, a lantern in one hand. a half-eaten pomegranate in the other. Trying to make the barley shrink itself, you say. She walks over, sets the lantern down, and hands you a seed. You can't feed everyone, she says. No, you agree. But I can get the math right. That's something. She nods. It's everything. You both stand in silence, surrounded by centuries of numbers. And for once, the only sound is the rustle of parchment, the hush of thought, and the soft drip of a leaky roof. Tomorrow will bring inspectors more shortages, more goats with attitudes. But tonight you are a man, with clay on his fingers, ink in his heart, and a small pomegranate seed between his teeth. It tastes like hope. The week begins with an unexpected twist romance. Well, not yours, that would be too exciting. You arrive to find the scribes buzzing, not about barley or audits, or even the goat who figured out how to open a grain jar, though that's still under investigation. No, today's topic is that Sumerian may be secretly betrothed to a merchant's son from the upper city. You freeze mid-sip of your morning beer porridge hybrid. Wait, what? Ninsen leans in, eyes gleaming. His name is Luani, sells lapis, smells like incense and ego. You try to play it cool. Isn't she a little too rational for a lapis salesman? Apparently not. Ninsen grins. He sent her a goat with a ribbon. You nearly choke. A goat. A very clean one. You nod slowly, setting down your cup. Romance is dead. You try not to care. You mostly succeed. You bury yourself in tablets and ink, reviewing temple labor rosters and ration logs with a level of intensity normally reserved for criminal trials. Your stylus is a blur. Your clay slabs dry faster than usual. You even correct Basie's column misalignments without insulting him much. Still, your eyes drift now and then toward the far table where Sumerian works quietly. Her face calm, her hands steady. She hums softly, a low, sweet tune, probably not about lapis. By mid-morning, you're pulled into a side room by Adel Nasir. He closes the door with that ceremonial gravity only senior bureaucrats can manage. We need to talk about the ledger, he says. You nod. Which one? The ledger, he says. Ah, the big one. The temple's primary master record, updated monthly, cross-checked quarterly, and in theory carved so perfectly it could be read by the gods themselves if they were bored enough. We've had some inconsistencies, he says. You suppress a sigh. Always. He lays down a tablet. You scan it. There's a suspicious bump in the grain-to-wool exchange logs. Someone traded 12 sacks of grain for what amounts to 2 mittens and a bad attitude. Who approved this, you ask? Technically, you did. You blink. No, I didn't. It has your signature wedge. You squint at it. The wedge is yours, but it's off just slightly. Too deep, too wide. Forgery. You rub your temples. Great. Someone's faking signatures now. Find out who Adel Nasir says quietly. You spend the rest of the day combing through records. It's grueling, dry, paranoid work. You look at every wedge stroke like it's trying to lie to you. You find 2 more tablets with your fake mark. Both involve favorable trade for someone named Elu Eker. You know that name. A mid-level priest with a fondness for honeyed beer and self-praise. You've seen him at festivals surrounded by sycophants, always pretending to forget your name. You corner him during evening offerings. Nice trade, you say. He squints. Pardon? Grain for wool. A very generous exchange, almost divine. He coughs, straightens his robe. I don't handle the ledgers directly. Someone forged my signature. That sounds serious. It is, especially if the forgery benefits the same person every time. He shrugs. Maybe it's a coincidence. Historians still argue whether coincidence is just laziness in disguise. He scowls. Are you accusing a priest? You smile. No, I'm recording a discrepancy. You leave before he can respond. Later, you quietly report the findings to Adel Nasir, who simply grunts and says the gods will judge, which you think is code for I'll take care of it, but might also mean let the guy sweat it out. By now, the office is nearly empty. Dumuzi is asleep with his head on a sack of clay. Ninsen is practicing curse calligraphy on scrap tablets. Bazi is balancing a stylus on his nose and humming something that sounds suspiciously like a hymn. You're still working, still writing, still thinking about forged names and lapis salesmen. Sumerian walks past. She pauses, looks at you. You've been quiet today, she says. You shrug. Lots of fraud and goats and fraud involving goats. She smiles. I'm not marrying the merchant. You blink. You're not. No, his goats smelled like onions. You laugh, too loud. Dumuzi stirs. Ninsen throws a date pit at your head. Sorry, you say, but you're still smiling. She hands you a tablet, one of your own, but revised. She's cleaned the layout, sharpened the spacing, and left a note at the bottom. You missed a double entry here. Fixed it. Fig wine later. You look up. Definitely, you say. She walks away. You reread the note. Twice. The day ends with a breeze blowing through the scribble room. Light, cool, unexpected. You stand in the doorway and breathe it in. The scent of clay ink and maybe something sweeter. As you walk home, the streets hum with festival preparation. Someone's drumming on an amphora. Someone else is singing about barley again. You hear laughter from the rooftop, where old priests play dice with tablets they pretend are broken. And somewhere behind you, the ledgers are resting. For now. Tomorrow the numbers will rise again. But tonight you're just a man with a stylus, a name to clear, and a possible fig wine date. You're halfway through your morning barley when Adel Nasir storms in, waving a tablet like it just insulted his mother. This is unacceptable, he says, before even reaching his desk. You freeze mid-chew. Dumuzi spills his ink. Ninsen doesn't flinch. She's seen this performance before. He slams the tablet down. You squint at it from across the room. It's one of the tax collector reports from the outer districts. You already know it's going to be a mess. They claim 10 oxen were delivered, he growls. You signed off on it. You raise your eyebrows. I haven't even seen 10 oxen this year. He breathes through his nose like a bull, deciding whether to charge. You walk over, tilt the tablet toward the light, and inspect the wedges. Forgery again, you say. Same false signature pattern. Look at the pressure on the upper corner, too heavy. He grumbles something about standards and storms off to file a complaint. Probably to the high priest. Or the gods. You return to your desk and update the office slate forgery count this month. 5. Do we get a prize if it hits 10 base, he asks. Yes, you reply. We all get to scream into a pot. Still, you have work to do. Today's task, prepare a special summary for the tax collectors arriving from Ummah. The officials from that city are notoriously smug and fond of footnotes. You once read a complaint tablet from them that had 17 lines of disclaimers and an appendix written in poetic form. You gather your ledgers and begin the process of compressing 3 months of data into a single readable report. It's like squeezing beer out of stone. Your tablet is clean, your symbols precise. You even remember to use the new official wedge for unit of measure, which now looks uncannily like a sleeping bird. Bazi insists it is a bird, and you've stopped arguing. Midway through the work, a runner bursts in with a delivery. A tablet sealed with an elaborate triple stamp. You recognize the seal immediately, House of Luani, the lapis merchant. You crack the seal with a stylus tip just to feel petty. Inside is a formal invitation to the Honorable Kupi Scribe of Barley, and balance you are invited to a small gathering honoring the engagement of Luani and Lady Sumerian. You blink, read it again, then once more because your brain short-circuits slightly after the word engagement. It's not official. She said it wasn't, she said. Ninsen appears behind you, that from the goat man. You nod. She snorts. You gonna go? I don't know. You slip the tablet under a pile of barley ledgers and pretend it never happened. The rest of the afternoon passes in a haze of distracted scribbling. Your totals are off. Your ink is smudged. You write sheep when you mean beer. It's a disaster. Adel Nasir notices. Something wrong, he asks. No, you say. Just contemplating my own insignificance in the face of lapis-based matchmaking. He stares, then walks away slowly. Eventually, Sumerian enters the room. She's holding a stack of corrected tax ledgers and a cup of what smells like mint water. Busy today, she asks. You nod without looking up. Monumentally, she places the ledgers on your desk and adds, he sent the invite without asking me. You finally look at her. I haven't said yes, she says a little softer now. And I'm not going to. You open your mouth, close it, reopen it with something vaguely coherent. Because he smells like incense and ego, you ask. She smiles. Because he talks about trade margins like it's poetry. And because he thinks scribes are beneath him. You lean back. He's not entirely wrong. We are pretty dusty. But not beneath him, she says. You want to say more. But for now the look is enough. Then Basie loudly drops a clay slab on his own foot, and the moment ends with a yelp and a broken unit of dried fish receipt. That night, the tax collectors arrive early. They barge into the scribe office with their stiff robes and traveling pens trailing behind, a servant carrying a massive scroll and a mysterious jar labeled emergency bribe. They demand a summary, you present your tablet. They demand figures, you show your clay. They demand clarification on the third quarter temple goat adjustments. You pull out Basie's dreaded side tablet, which he color-coded with red ink and nervous sweat. Eventually, they run out of demands. One nods. Acceptable, he says. You don't punch the air, but only because your hand is still cramping from writing oxen adjustment ratio 12 times. By the time they leave, it's dark. The streets are quiet. You remain at your desk checking one last entry for the day. A line item about extra porridge distributed during last month's flood. You remember that week how wet the clay got, how the storeroom nearly collapsed, how you and Summeraan worked by lantern light, with your feet ankle-deep in mud. You added that porridge manually, even though it wasn't required, because people were cold, because math can be kind. You press your stylus into the final line and write confirmed. Rations rendered, order sustained. Outside, the moon rises like a polished lentil in the sky. A dog barks. Somewhere a sheep sneezes. You pack up your things. You're tired, slightly hopeful, and still a little confused about the engagement that isn't. But tomorrow is another day, another barley count, another clean slate. Morning breaks with the sound of shouting goats. You lie in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the chaos outside. Hooves on stone. Someone yelling, "That's my goat." A goat yelling back in goat. You get up. Outside, the sun has just crept over the rooftops of painting the alleyways in dusty gold. You pass two young boys dragging a broken cart full of onions, and a woman furiously arguing with a priest over the definition of donation. Typical Tuesday. At the office, you find the cause of the commotion. The livestock census has begun early. Of course it has. The temple courtyard is filled with bleating, baying, snorting confusion. A nervous junior scribe is trying to tally sheep as they sprint past him. One particularly aggressive ram headbutts a column. You sigh, roll up your sleeves, and wade in. Today's assignment is the official tally of all livestock, held under temple stewardship: sheep, goats, oxen, and a single stubborn donkey named Itu, who may or may not have been cursed. You're handed a thick clay tablet and a stylus so blunt it might be considered a spoon. You request a new one. You're denied. Budget cuts, mutters the quartermaster. Wonderful, you mutter back. The livestock pens are chaos incarnate. Every animal smells worse than the last. The oxen are bored and enormous. The sheep are slippery and judgmental. The goats, well, the goats are just criminals in wool coats. You start counting. 1, 2, 3. No, that one circled back. 3 again. You bark orders at a few attendants to stop doubling up entries. You remind the novice scribes not to list brown as a quantity. You personally correct a record that listed 6 goats plus 2 mysteries as valid inventory. You pause when you reach the donkey. Itu. You've known him for years. He looks at you with the blank disdain of someone who has seen too much bureaucracy. Still cursed, you ask him. He snorts. You mark him down as present surly. You break for lunch after 4 hours of animal math and sit on a sun-warmed ledge, nibbling flatbread and sipping watery beer. Your legs ache. Your stylus hand is cramped. There's a hoof print on your robe. Bazi sits beside you and points to a small scratch on your arm. Battle scar. Sheep ambush. He nods solemn. They work in flocks. After lunch, Adal Nasir appears with a new directive cross-check. All livestock totals with the feed allotments from last month. You squint at him. That's nearly impossible. The counts were based on estimations. Then estimate better, he says. Historians still argue whether this level of bureaucratic overkill was common in temple operations, or the result of one very petty supervisor trying to impress the king. You return to your desk and begin the comparison process, line by painful line. You notice patterns. A pen listed with 10 goats has feed usage for 12. Another has wool records but no sheep. One bizarrely lists feed for unspecified large creature. You make a note. Please specify creature or return feed. As the afternoon deepens, you begin to hallucinate numbers. You double-check a column 3 times only to discover the problem was not the math, but that you'd been staring at your own handwriting upside down. You take a walk, short, just around the scribal wing. You find Sumerian sitting on the edge of the archive room, writing on a small curved tablet. Her brow is furrowed. She's not humming. Still not marrying him, you ask gently. She shakes her head. He tried to compare his beard to Enki's in public. You wince. Tragic. She smiles, but it doesn't reach her eyes. He doesn't see this work, she says, gesturing to the tablets, the ink, the quiet chaos. He thinks it's just counting. You sit beside her. It's more than that, you say. It's memory, justice, control. And goats, especially goats. The silence that follows is warm and familiar. You look at her hands, ink-stained, confident. You feel a strange sense of comfort. Not lightning, not fire, just alignment. Before you can speak again, a bell rings outside the temple, summoning signal. Evening tallies, she says, standing. You both head back in, together. The rest of the evening is spent transcribing totals, smoothing out errors, and finalizing the livestock records. You record your final number to room 56. Sheep 84 goats, 21 oxen, 1 donkey, 0 regrets. You write it all with care, not for fame, not for praise, because someone must, because order matters. When you finally leave, the sky is soft and dark, the stars blinking like forgotten numbers in the heavens. You pause by the door. Look back. The office glows faintly from within, and tomorrow it will begin again. But tonight you are calm, balanced, a ledger momentarily complete. You don't mean to start your day talking to yourself, but it sort of happens. You're halfway through preparing a new tablet for temple maintenance expenses, listing brick repairs, fresh reed mats, and one absolutely massive water jar that cracked. Under mysterious circumstances, when you realize you've been muttering, "No one authorized this," under your breath for 20 minutes straight. Even Dumuzi looks concerned. And Dumuzi once tried to calculate sheep fertility rates using moon phases. The problem today, nothing adds up. Someone ordered triple the amount of roof patching tar than was needed. The reed mat count exceeds the number of rooms in the temple. And someone, a very bold someone, has submitted a labor invoice for spiritual supervision of drying clay. You reread that line 5 times. It doesn't get less stupid. You march over to Adil Nasir's desk and slap the tablet down. Permission to smite. He glances at it. Denied. Investigate. Which is scribal code for fix it without making me get involved. You start digging deep. You pull 3 prior ledgers, cross-reference expenditure records, and corner 2 junior scribes near the archive chamber. They fold instantly. It was Bazu One squeaks. He said it was allowed if it had a sacred purpose. Is dry clay sacred now, you ask? To him, the other mutters, yes. You find Bazu by the kiln meditating. You break his trance by tossing him a broken stylus. Explain the spiritual supervision fee, you say. He opens one eye. I watched it dry, with intention. You squint. So you're a clay whisperer now. I prefer earth resonance specialist. You report the line item as creative accounting, deduct the cost from future tar orders, and add a side note in your personal log. Bazu, monitored. Later that morning, a messenger arrives with a tightly wrapped clay packet from the city's eastern archives. You open it cautiously. Messages from the eastern scribal district always come with a faint scent of mildew and mild panic. Inside is a temple-wide inquiry about ink shortages. You sigh loudly. It seems someone, probably the same genius who ordered 10 jars of sandalwood oil for illumination, has drained half the ink supply in the name of tablet beautification. Apparently they've been decorating margins with stylized lions. You open a scroll of the embellished tablets. One has a lion eating a tax ledger. Another features a lion reclining on a grain sack. You have to admit they're well done. Artistic Sumerian says, peeking over your shoulder. Extravagant, you reply. I'd hang one on my wall. Don't give them ideas. You draft a formal response. While creativity is valued, please remember, ink is not eternal, or free, or edible. Historians still debate whether these illustrated ledgers marked the birth of temple aesthetics or just a brief lapse in supply chain judgment. The afternoon brings an unexpected visit from an elder archivist named Nergal Enzu, a man who smells like onion's dust and forgotten decisions. He carries with him a wrapped bundle. Carefully, reverently, he unveils it, an original temple ledger from 70 years ago, carved by one of the first chief scribes of Ur. The tablet is massive, heavy, etched so finely you can see the fingerprints of the original scribe in the clay. Just arrived from the restoration vault, he whispers. You run your fingers over the ancient marks, clean, confident. It's beautiful. Why bring this here, you ask? To remind you, he says, what lasts, what matters. He leaves. No explanation, just the echo of sandals and age. You sit with the tablet for a long time, its silence louder than the buzzing office. This scribe from generations ago, his name is forgotten. His sandals long gone, but his work still here. Still legible. Still respected. You return to your own tablet and carve slower, cleaner. You erase one line and rewrite it just to make the spacing perfect. You add nothing fancy, no lions, just truth. As evening falls, the light shifts golden through the reed-slatted windows. The scribes file out one by one, murmuring farewells and temple gossip. You linger. You place the old chief scribe's tablet gently back in its wrapping and write a brief note to accompany it. No errors found, no embellishments added, a perfect balance. Sumerian appears as you wash your hands. She leans against the doorframe, watching you quietly. You looked different today, she says, haunted by old ink. She smiles. You were inspired. You don't deny it. You want to see something, she asks, holding up a fresh slab. My new ledger template. Fewer columns, more space between entries. You take it, turn it over. It's beautiful, efficient, thoughtful. You should submit this, you say, to the Central Archive Board. She shrugs. They'll say it's too modern. They said the same about using styluses with angled tips. Now everyone uses them. She meets your eyes. You think it's time. You nod, past time. You walk home together in comfortable silence, your sandals kicking up soft clouds of dust. The air is cool. The stars blink into view one by one like silent scribes on an infinite tablet. Somewhere behind you, a tablet from 70 years ago rests beside one from today. No names carved, just numbers, just balance. But that's enough. You look up, the stars look back, and for a moment you feel part of something wider, something recorded, something remembered. The week opens with an assignment so dull it feels like a prank. Inventorying the temple's ceremonial sandals. Yes, sandals. Not gold, not grain, not even goats. Footwear. You arrive to find a massive pile of them dumped in a side room of the temple storehouse. Straps, tangled soles, mismatched, some still carrying the faint smell of sacred sweat. Nasir appears beside you, holding a fresh slab and a stylus like he's about to assign you to the front line of an invisible war. They want a count of every pair used in processions for the last 3 years, he says flatly. 3 years, you ask. 3 years. Why? He blinks. Because someone accused the high priest's nephew of borrowing the gold-threaded ones for a date. You stare at him. Borrowing. Romantic ceremonial theft was the phrase used. You take the slab mentally, start drafting your resignation, and begin. The room is a mess. There are sandals with inscriptions, sandals with broken thongs, sandals made from palm fiber, and mysteriously, a pair made entirely from flattened reeds that crumble when you breathe on them. You organize them by size, by design, and when desperation hits, by most likely to have touched divine feet. You start carving the entries into clay pair 001, leather cracked sole inscribed with Enki bless these toes. Pair 002, unknown material, possibly experimental, smells like fish. Halfway through, Bazi walks in, takes one look at the scene, and whispers, "Are we worshipping feet now?" You throw a sandal at him. Sumerian appears later bringing water and mild judgment. You look like a man questioning his place in the cosmos. You nod solemnly. I touched something that had toe-lint from 2273 BCE. She wrinkles her nose. Sanctified. Sanctified. She helps you for a while, organizing the mess with surprising grace. It's quiet work, methodical, soothing even. She hums while she works. You try not to notice. You fail. By late afternoon, your slab has 63 entries. You're only halfway done. Your hands are dry from the clay dust. Your eyes are tired. But there's a strange sense of accomplishment in it all. Someone needs to record these forgotten souls, and that someone tragically is you. You take a break outside and sit under a date palm, wiping your hands on your tunic. The sun is low. There's music somewhere in the distance, likely a practice run for the upcoming moon festival. A drum, a flute, the slow rhythm of a city trying to remember joy. You close your eyes for a moment, then someone kicks your sandal. You look up. A young boy no older than 10 stares at you holding a tablet half his size. "Your copy," he asks. You nod. "This is for you." He hands you the slab, then bolts. You read the inscription. It's from the Central Scribe Council. They've accepted Sumerian's new ledger format. You blink. You read it again. Accepted. Not considered. Not under review. Accepted. You smile so wide your face aches. You head back inside and find her in the storeroom, still sorting ceremonial slippers like a priestess of forgotten feet. "They approved it, you say." She looks up, stunned. "Already." You hand her the slab. She reads it, exhales, and then just for a moment, her entire face glows. You say nothing. She says nothing. You don't need to. Later that evening, as the scribes start to leave you and Sumerian linger, you both carry your finished sandal inventory tablets, a silent badge of survival. "You want to celebrate," she asks, "with fig wine and a lecture on column spacing." Obviously, you walk together through Ur's twilight streets, past oil lamps flickering on clay windowsills, past giggling children chasing each other through alleys, past a musician plucking something that might have once been a harp. The world is winding down, but you feel lighter. The stars are bright tonight. No clouds, just clarity. You think of those sandals now neatly logged and labeled. How even something as ridiculous as ceremonial footwear has found its place in the grand order of things. You wonder, will someone one day find your tablet and wonder why sandals mattered? You hope they laugh. You hope they get it. You and Sumerian pause at the edge of the river, watching the moon reflect on the water's surface. She kicks off one sandal and dips her foot in. "You think those priests ever walked through mud with their golden sandals?" she asks. You grin. "Probably tripped and blamed it on the gods." She laughs, soft and genuine. You sit there for a while saying nothing. 2 scribes, 2 sandals, and a future no one wrote yet. But if you had to write it, you'd make sure it had space for this. The moon festival arrives with all the subtlety of a goat parade. You wake to the sound of drums, deep, rhythmic, insistent, and a flute that hits notes so shrill they seem designed to summon spirits, or at least rattle the elderly. Outside, the air smells like roasted lentils incense, and something suspiciously similar to old fish being passed off as river blessings. The temple is already decorated when you arrive. Garlands of dried flowers hang from every doorway. Flickering oil lamps line the halls, and someone, probably Basie, has drawn moons, with smiling faces on half the courtyard walls. The scribal office is quieter than usual. Most of the city is off duty, but you're not most of the city. You're the one who has to record the festival expenses, track sacred inventory usage, and compile the temple's joy report. Yes, that's what it's called. You sit down and look at the fresh slab waiting for you. Title already etched across the top: festival inventory joy metrics and incident log. You sigh deeply. Dumuzi wanders in, wearing a ceremonial tunic, 2 sizes too big, and eating something sticky on a stick. Guess what he says? "No, there's already been a fight at the fish soup stand." Of course there has. Someone claimed the offering fish tasted like it was sacrificed last year. You make a new entry on the tablet. Incident 0001 soup dispute, likely over freshness and divine flavor accuracy. Sumerian joins you shortly after, her hair tied back, stylus tucked into her sash, She hands you a small tablet with neat entries logs of the ceremonial torch procession, including how many torches went missing. 7, she says, including one thrown into a barrel for no reason. You raise an eyebrow. Divine rage, or too much festival beer. You add it to the incident log. By mid-morning, you've documented over 30 festival anomalies, including a child painting moons on goats, a priest miscounting his incense and blaming it on spirit winds, an old woman who smuggled honey cakes into the sacred circle and refused to share. You're halfway through logging musical performance expenses when Bazi bursts in. There's a fire. You blink. Where? He points. Near the ziggurat. Someone lit the sacred drum too close to an oil jug. You follow him out. Sure enough, a small blaze dances beside a scorched drum, while 2 panicking attendants try to smother it with temple robes. The high priest is yelling about divine signs. The goats have fled. You scribble a quick update, Incident 041, Sacred Drum Immolated. Goat stampede, likely unrelated. Sumerian appears at your side, watching the chaos. This is the most fun I've had all week, she says. You nod. We should throw things into barrels more often. The fire's out within minutes, the high priest declares. It's a message from the moon goddess, and the crowd cheers. No one mentions the oil jug. You retreat to the office and update the tally. You're now 62 incidents deep and counting. The joy metrics section is harder. How do you quantify happiness? Sumerian suggests listing how many people danced during the moon chant. You count 37. Do we count goats, she asks. You think about it. Only if they danced voluntarily. You keep writing. It's absurd. It's exhausting. It's kind of perfect. That afternoon, you help supervise the ritual gift offerings. People come forward in long lines, leaving small tokens, figs, flowers, little clay trinkets. One man places a flute carved from bone. A child offers a doll with one eye missing. A baker leaves a perfect loaf of sweet bread. Each gift is recorded, each name marked. You wonder if the gods get bored of all this. Then again, maybe not. Maybe they like the repetition, the noise, the effort. You certainly do. Later, you and Sumerian take a break by the temple wall. You each hold a cup of sour date wine and a small bowl of nuts. Around you, the festival winds down. Drums grow softer. Lamps flicker in the gathering dark. You ever think this is ridiculous, she asks. The math, the festival life, all of it. You sip your wine. Yes, but I also think it's the most important ridiculous thing we do. She smiles. You finish the day with one last tablet, your official festival summary report. You mark 73 incidents. 119 participants in the night chant. 5 missing goats. 1 dancing priest. 0 casualties. You close with order, disrupted, restored, and celebrated. Joy probable. You place the tablet gently on the rack. You dust off your hands. You exhale. Outside, the moon rises fat and bright. Someone plays a flute near the river. A goat bleats softly in the distance, possibly in protest. You and Sumerian walk side by side through the cooling night. Neither of you speaks. There's nothing left to say. You wrote it all down. And the moon watched. The temple roof is leaking again. Not a little leak either. A full, dripping, slow-motion disaster. You arrive early, hoping for a calm start after the chaos of the moon festival, only to find 3 scribes standing ankle-deep in water, staring up at a crack in the ceiling that seems to be widening with every drop. Well, Bazi says this explains the flood dreams. You ignore him and wade in sandals squelching on the soaked reed mats. Several clay tablets float past like defeated ships. One is labeled Temple Broom Ration Schedule. You fish it out and set it on a bench. Adel-Nasir storms in moments later, looks at the puddle, and immediately demands a complete inventory of all damaged records. Of course he does. You spend the next 3 hours sorting the office into 3 piles salvageable, smudged, but decipherable, and definitely became soup. It's exhausting, filthy work. You smell like mildew and regret by noon. The youngest scribe cries when he sees his week's work reduced to damp sludge. You offer him your bread. He takes it like a war ration. Sumerian appears with replacement tablets and a large jug of fresh ink. The gods giveth, the gods taketh, and the roof leakseth, she says, deadpan. You laugh harder than you should. You're probably dehydrated. By early afternoon, the flood is under control. A team of workers from the temple of Ninlil is hammering reeds into the hole and muttering about poor craftsmanship. You return to your desk to begin the long, soul-flattening task of rewriting your ruined records. First up, the broom schedule. You carefully rewrite each entry, which storeroom gets swept, on which day who's in charge, and critically how much reed broom replacement stock is currently on hand. You never thought sweeping logistics would matter so much, but now you write about it like it's poetry. Storeroom 2 swept every 3rd day, alternating between apprentice Arad and that other one who smells like fish. As you work, you're approached by a short, squinting figure, a messenger from the Ziggurat library. He hands you a sealed message tablet, then disappears back into the sunlight. You open it. Request from Ziggurat archivist transfer of backup temple ledgers requested for preservation. Include oldest available duplicates and correction logs. You pause. The backup archives, the dusty shelf no one touches. Some of those tablets are decades-old copies, of copies kept as insurance in case of fire flood or apparently spontaneous roofing failure. You dig through the shelf and pull out the ancient slabs. The clay is brittle, the wedge marks faint. You can barely read the older symbols curved differently tighter, like a different dialect of numbers. And there at the very bottom, you find something else. Not a ledger, not a receipt, a journal of sorts. It's a personal tablet, unsigned, dated maybe 60 years ago. The writing is casual, looser. It's not a record, it's a confession. I watched the temple burn from a distance. We lost 30 tablets, but the people were safe. That is what mattered. I rewrote what I could, but memory is a fragile ledger. You read it twice, then a 3rd time, and it hits you some forgotten scribe, long gone, once stood in the same position you're in now, rebuilding, recounting, recovering, not because someone told them to, but because it was worth doing. You place the tablet aside, not to send, to keep. You resume your transcriptions with renewed focus. You even reformat a few entries for clarity. It's still brooms, it's still floor duty, but now it feels like legacy. By sunset, the roof is patched, the water's gone, and your desk holds 6 clean, dry tablets restored, organized, balanced. You lean back in your chair, tired, sore, proud. Sumerian joins you, hands streaked with ink, a smudge on her cheek. You survived, she says. Barely. She sits beside you. You know, I used to think the records were about control, proof of authority, that kind of thing. They're not, you ask. She shakes her head. They're about survival, not just physical, memory, continuity, proof that we were here and we tried. You glance over at the old journal tablet, still resting beside your new ones. Agreed. Later that night, you walk home with your stylus tucked safely into your sash. The air smells like damp clay and cooling brick. You pass by the workers from Ninlil's temple, sharing food in the street. One offers you a date. You accept. You pause outside the temple gates and look back. The office lights are still on. Tomorrow there will be new records, new errors, new floods. But tonight you remembered something important. You're not just recording numbers. You're recording persistence, one wedge mark at a time. It starts with a dream. You're walking through the temple courtyard, but everything's silent, too silent. No scribes, no goats, not even Bossy humming off key. You look down and the floor is covered in tablets. Hundreds, maybe, thousands cracked, smudged blank. You kneel to read one, but there's nothing on it. No numbers, no wedge marks, just smooth clay. You pick up another, blank, another, still blank. Then from behind you a voice. If no one remembers, did it happen? You turn, but you wake up, and your pillow's wet with sweat, and your fingers are curled like they're still holding a stylus. You shake it off, sit up, and try to convince yourself it wasn't a metaphor. Back at the scribal office, the mood is lighter, the leak is patched, the floor is dry, and even Adal Nasir looks moderately less haunted. You sit at your desk and find a fresh assignment waiting, preparation of promotion evaluation materials. You stare. Promotion. You read again. You haven't misread. Your name cup is listed for consideration for Chief Temple Scribe of Internal Records. You blink 3 times and check the wax seal. It's real. The assignment came from the Regional Clerical Council. Dumuzi leans over your shoulder, squints at the tablet, and whispers, "Please accept. That way I'll be second in command and can implement mandatory nap breaks." You push him away. You'll be second in line for goat rations if you keep talking. Still, your hands are shaking slightly as you unwrap the rest of the message. It's all here: your previous performance reviews, ledger summaries, even commendations from the temple archivist and 2 other scribes, one of them Sumerian. You weren't expecting this. You always thought the job would go to someone flashier, louder, or more aggressively competent in ceremonial beard oil application. But here it is. And now you have to prepare a summary of career accomplishments, samples of high-quality ledgers, and a philosophical statement on the role of scribes in urban temple life. You stare into the distance. Basie appears beside you. You look like a man who's just been asked to describe the soul of a broom. You nod. Worse, I have to justify the soul of a spreadsheet. May the gods weep for you. You spend the rest of the morning pulling samples your best work. The barley audits from last year, the Moon Festival log. That one goat theft investigation where you identified the culprit based on hoofprint spacing. It's a strange feeling looking back through your own history. You've recorded so many other people's lives. Now you're archiving your own. Sumerian walks by and pauses. You saw the message she asks. You nod, still recovering. You deserve it. You glance at her uncertain. You're not disappointed. She laughs. Could be I nominated you. You sit with that for a moment. Let it settle in your chest like warm clay. Later in the quiet of the archive room, you begin drafting your philosophical statement. The tablet for it is wider than usual, intimidating. You stare at it for a long time before pressing the first symbol. A scribe is not a priest, not a merchant, not a king. A scribe is the silence between voices, the translator of chaos into clarity. You pause, rewrite the line. A scribe makes memory permanent, turns breath into mark, error into truth, forgetting into legacy. You add another wedge mark. We do not rule, we do not shout, we record. By sundown you've filled the tablet. It's not perfect, but it's honest. You sign your name, not your fancy title, not your abbreviated work designation, just Huapato. Before you leave, you place the tablet carefully on the review rack beside the others. You don't read anyone else's. You don't need to. Outside, the air is thick and warm. Summer is approaching. The city smells like dust olives and tomorrow's heat. You walk slowly each step, feeling just slightly heavier than usual. At home you sit on your rooftop and watch the sky change. The stars come out like they're being counted 1, 2, 3. You smile at the thought who's tracking them, who's writing them down. Probably some poor celestial scribe, hunched over a moonbeam tablet, muttering about constellation overages. You hope they have a comfortable chair. You hear footsteps. Sumerian. She climbs up beside you carrying 2 clay cups. Fig wine, you take one. No styluses tonight, she says. No ledgers. No goats? You clink cups. You sit in silence for a while, listening to the breeze move through the city like an old song. Somewhere someone plays a harp. Somewhere else a scribe drops a tablet and swears very quietly. I read your statement, she says at last. You stiffen, huh? And I liked the bit about turning forgetting into legacy. Thanks, I almost cut that part. She smiles. Don't. You sip your wine. The stars above you flicker like they're being scratched into clay. And for the first time in a long time, you feel like maybe, just maybe, someone will remember you. You don't sleep much. Promotion nerves. Clay dust in your lungs. Or maybe just that strange feeling that things are changing and not just the tablet formats. By dawn, you're back at the temple, early, alone. The scribal chamber is quiet, lit only by a soft sliver of sun, creeping through the high slit windows. It smells like yesterday ink old sandals, the faint trace of fig wine from someone's secret stash. You sit down at your desk and breathe it in. You've grown to love that smell. You glance over at the review rack. Your tablet is still there, neat and untouched. Others have joined it, Dumuzis, Bazis, Ninsons, all lined up like tiny terracotta tombstones for ambition. You resist the urge to compare handwriting. Instead, you dive into your assigned task for the day, auditing grain shipments from the outer districts, which sounds boring because it is, but also because the outer districts have a long-standing habit of creative estimation. If they send 10 sacks, they write down 12. If one gets eaten by rats, it becomes a divine loss. You're here to fix all that. You start with the basics. Clay slabs your trusted stylus and a pot of diluted ink. You mutter numbers to yourself as you work, slowly falling into the rhythm of it all. Wedge, wedge, curve, erase, wedge again. Halfway through the first report, you spot it. A shipment of grain from Gursu marked as delivered 200 sacks. You squint. That's 20 more than last month, and there hasn't been a harvest. You flip to the last quarter's regional reports. Same shipment, 180 sacks. Then 180 again. Suddenly 200. You mark it, likely inflation. Verify with Gursu Temple Scribe. You pause, then add politely. He's the one who broke my stylus last time. Sumerian enters as you're working. She's early too. You smile. You're reviewing Gursu, she asks, setting her own slabs on the table. Apparently they've been praying extra hard and manifesting grain. She laughs, sits down beside you, and starts her own work. You don't talk much. You don't need to. Later, during the morning meal, Adel Nasir calls a meeting. Rare. Everyone groans. Meetings usually mean someone forgot to file something, or we're switching ink suppliers again, or worst of all, team-building chance. But not today. Adel Nasir steps into the center of the chamber, with the expression of someone delivering either a eulogy or a promotion. You brace yourself. The council has made their decision, he says. You swallow. He clears his throat. Cuppy, you are to be appointed Chief Scribe of Internal Records. The room freezes. You blink. Dumuzi claps once too loudly, then tries to pretend he wasn't about to say something sarcastic. Basie lets out a dramatic gasp, and immediately begins chanting, "All hail the Ledger Lord." You sit in stunned silence. Sumerian just smiles. You rise awkwardly and walk toward Adal Nasir, who hands you a fresh ceremonial tablet etched with your new duties. It weighs more than it should, not just because it's big, because it means something. The rest of the day is a blur. Congratulations. Jealous grumbles. Bazi composing an impromptu hymn to balanced columns. You respond to all of it with a mix of humility and the slow creeping realization that this is your life now. Your actual first duty, reviewing the layout for the new Outer District granary logs. Of course, no chariot rides, no festival speeches, just redoing barley math. But you do it with a new tablet, a new title, and a chair that doesn't wobble quite as much. Late in the afternoon, Sumerian taps on your desk. "Walk with me." You nod. You stroll together through the outer courtyard. The sky is heavy with the coming evening. Pigeons coo from rooftops. A cat eyes them without much hope. So she says, "How does it feel?" "Weird." "That's it." "Also dusty." She grins. "I'm glad it's you." You stop by the fig tree where you first shared that strange, awkward silence months ago. The goat is still tied nearby, possibly the same one, possibly reincarnated, possibly immortal. You've stopped asking. "I was thinking," you say, "about that dream I had. The one with the blank tablets." You blink. "How did you?" You talk in your sleep, loudly. You flush. "Right." She sits on the ledge. "Well, they're not blank now." You glance back toward the scribe chamber, the shelves, the slabs, the lives recorded. "No," you say, "they're not." She looks at you. "You know I turned down the marriage offer." "I know." She leans in slightly. "You never asked why." You hesitate. "Because he didn't see you, not the real you, just the surface." She smiles. "Correct answer." You sit beside her. The wind picks up. A fresh breeze through the streets, the sound of sandals on stone, the low hum of a city that despite everything is still functioning, still surviving. You stand and offer her your hand. "Dinner my treat." "Unless it's over 3 shekels, then we're splitting." She takes it. You walk side by side, 2 scribes in a city of mud brick and moonlight ink and memory. The city won't remember your name in songs, but your tablets will remain, wedge by wedge, line by line. You made your mark, and that's enough. You thought a promotion might change everything. It doesn't. Your sandals still squeak when wet. The ink still runs when someone leaves the lid off. The goats still find new and innovative ways to humiliate scribes in public. What does change is your chair. It's bigger, sturdier, polished even. Someone etched a tiny sun symbol into the top rail, probably a novice, trying to be poetic. You let it stay. As chief scribe of internal records, your first official duty is exactly what you feared paperwork about paperwork. You review ink usage ledgers, stylus procurement records, and a baffling request from someone in the Eastern Wing asking if they can experiment with vertical columns. You deny it immediately. You're not about to let that chaos loose. You're also now responsible for training new scribes. The temple sent 3 fresh recruits. They're barely old enough to lift a full tablet. One keeps referring to barley rations as barley snacks. Another keeps drawing faces in the margins. The third, silent, precise, reminds you of yourself at that age. You gather them near the archive shelves and begin the first lesson. This, you say, holding up a clay slab, is not just a lump of dirt. They stare. This is memory. This is law. This is the only reason your neighbors don't steal your goats and call it divine inspiration. They nod slightly terrified. You smile. You'll get used to it. You teach them wedge angles, how to trim damp clay, how to recognize a stylus that's past its prime. You show them how to center their columns, how to space their numbers, and most importantly, how to spot a fake signature. You even throw in the spiritually supervised drawing story. That gets a laugh. They relax. You feel like a small god of order for 10 seconds. Later, Sumerian walks in and drops a tablet on your desk without a word. It's your audit summary from last season. Excellent, marked in red. A small circle is drawn around one of the ledger lines. You read the note. Even your sarcasm is symmetrical. You grin. That evening, you're summoned to a meeting with the temple council. You hate meetings, but this one is different. The High Archivist himself attends, his robes heavy with age and responsibility. He reads your tablet submissions, asks you questions, nods occasionally, never smiles, never frowns, just nods. Then he says, "You've done well, Kabi." You blink. "Thank you, sir. We are considering transcribing your training templates into the permanent scribe curriculum." You stare. That would be an honor." He nods again. "It is." Then he's gone. You walk back to your chamber in a daze. That night you lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this is it, if this is what legacy feels like. The next day the grain storeroom catches fire. Not a big fire, thankfully. Just enough to blacken the ledger shelf and ruin 3 months of shipment logs. You're called in to assess damage and recompile the records again. You stand over the charred slabs and sigh. Deeply, from the soul. You turn to the storage team. Anyone want to explain how a torch ended up wedged under a barley sack? They all look at their feet. You set your jaw and begin. It takes 4 days, 2 burned fingertips, and 1 emergency stylus order. But you reconstruct every shipment, every sack, every barley gram. You even add a new label system, so this doesn't happen again. Barley is not flammable under divine protection. Bazi says when he sees your warning sign. Then clearly someone was very unblessed, you reply. You finish the job, log the corrections, and submit a fresh report. At the bottom, you sign it with your new title. But just beneath it, in small letters, you add, "Compiled in full, despite fire under duress, with 1 good sandal." Adel Nasir finds the note 2 days later and bursts out laughing. You've never heard him laugh before. You make a mental note to record it. Back in your office, you find a new tablet on your desk. No seal, no markings, just a single line carved deep. What is written cannot be burned. You don't know who left it, but you keep it. You place it at the top of your shelf. Not everything needs a name. Some things just endure. You're writing by lantern light when the rains begin. Heavy, sudden soaking. The kind of rain that erases footprints, floods alleyways, and makes you thankful every temple roof has at least 1 reliable bucket underneath it. You listen to the rhythm of it, tapping against the clay tiles. Feel its vibration in the soles of your sandals. Sumerian walks in soaked to the elbows, holding a slab in one hand and a half-dissolved scroll in the other. The ink ran, she says. You nod solemnly. May its symbols find peace? She sets it down and wrings out her sleeves. You hand her a towel, well, a mostly clean cloth you usually use for polishing your stylus. She takes it anyway. Another warehouse collapsed, she adds. South wall. The one with the festival reserves. You blink. The sweet barley. She nods. And most of the fig stalk. You place your tablet down slowly. This is a crisis. By mid-morning, you're knee-deep in disaster reports. Flooded archives, ruined grain, confused clerks insisting their numbers are emotionally accurate, despite being factually catastrophic. You split your time between assessing damage and calming novices who are now convinced the gods are punishing them for miscounting sheep last week. They are not, probably. A stone runner from the market brings word most of the merchant stalls are underwater. Bazi bursts in. shortly after soaked and holding an eel in one hand and a tax tablet in the other. This was swimming near the barley logs, he says. I think it's now legally a priest. You confiscate the eel and move on. Later, during a lull in the chaos, you find yourself in the outer storehouse, what's left of it. The rain's still falling, but softer now, like the sky is finally tired. You kneel beside a crate of half-wet ledgers, carefully peeling clay tablets from the mud. Each one is fragile, slick with silt, but readable. You wipe one clean and see your own handwriting. A tablet from 2 years ago. A simple inventory. You smile. Even now the lines hold. Even after water time, neglect they hold. What is written cannot be burned? You wonder. Maybe it can't be washed away either. Sumerian appears beside you with more rescued tablets. Her fingers are stained with ink and grit. She hands you one and says, I think this one was yours. It's still balanced. You nod. Of course it is. You work together into the evening, rebuilding what was damaged, remarking what was lost. Every wedge stroke is quiet defiance. Every clean line is an act of belief that structure still matters, even when the world floods. The night is colder than expected. You both huddle under the awning outside the scribe office, watching the city try to dry itself. Fires flicker. People wander with baskets looking for dry ground. You ever wonder why we do this? She asks suddenly. All of it, every day. The tablets, the grain, counts the ink. You shrug, because someone has to. She's quiet. Then she says, I think we do it to be remembered. You turn to look at her. Not in statues or stories, she continues, but in small ways. A perfect column, a corrected error, a goat whose name we remembered. It's our way of saying, I was here, I did this, I cared. You sit with that for a long time. A drop of water lands on your nose. You ever think maybe we're not boring you? Ask. She chuckles. Oh, we are, deeply. But maybe boring is just another word for dependable. She raises her cup to dependable. You raise yours to clay. The next morning you wake early. You walk to the temple archives, carrying a stack of re-recorded flood reports. On your way, a child stops you muddy wide-eyed, holding a crumpled note. Are you the man who writes down everything? You crouch. That depends. Do I owe you grain? No, the child says. But my mom said you made sure our name didn't get erased. You blink. Smile. I try. You walk on. In the office, the sun shines through for the first time in days. You set the tablets on the drying rack. Each one represents hours of recovery, of teamwork, of shared memory. You sit at your desk, pick up your stylus, and begin carving the day's entry. Rain subsided, ledgers salvaged, spirits mostly intact. No further eel sightings. You press the final wedge mark with care. Outside the clay dries, and so does the world. The heat returns with a vengeance. Dry, heavy, almost personal. It clings to your tunic, warps fresh tablets if you leave them too close to the window, and makes even the most sacred chamber smell faintly like overcooked lentils and regret. You don't complain much. Instead, you lean into routine. It's a strange comfort now, this rhythm of numbers and names and wedge-shaped permanence. You rise early, make your way through the awakening streets of Urnod to the Potter sidestep, the ever-present goat, and reach the temple before the city fully stirs. Your morning task today is humble but necessary. Updating the public rations board. It's a slab mounted just outside the scribe chamber, listing daily grain and beer allowances. Most citizens pass it without looking. A few squint at it suspiciously, wondering why their allotment is a handful shorter this week. You scrape off the old entries with care. The clay gives way beneath your stylus with a dry hiss, like sand letting go of its grip. You rewrite the new numbers slowly, cleanly. You don't rush. You never rush this part, because you know someone will read it. A farmer, a weaver, a mother with her child on one hip and a jug in the other. They'll squint at your work and find in your marks some reassurance, a sign that even if the city shakes or the floods return, someone is keeping track, someone is paying attention. Inside Sumerian is overseeing the tablet rotation, replacing cracked records with fresh copies, archiving the old, arranging the rest by relevance and material type. Her method is elegant, unshowy, effective. You admire her, but that's nothing new. Midday, you're asked to speak at The Apprentice, gathering a new cohort still full of awe and ink smudges. You stand before them, your tunic slightly wrinkled, your stylus holstered like a badge of mild disappointment. What makes a scribe? One of them asks. You pause, not because you don't know, but because you want to get it right. A scribe, you begin, is someone who listens to time. They blink. We don't just record, we translate chaos. We hold the past in one hand and the future in the other, and we scratch the present into permanence. You hold up a blank tablet. This is how memory becomes matter. This is how the world remembers itself. They nod. One of them sneezes into a scroll. You sigh, and this is why we use clay. You return to your chamber and find a surprise waiting, a gift slab unsigned. You recognize the handwriting. It's Sumerian's. It reads, "You taught me to care about the spacing between things." You smile. There's nothing more to say. That night, the city holds a quiet festival. No fanfare, no drums. Just oil lamps floating on the river and low chanting that drifts up like fog. You stand at the edge of the water, arms folded, sandals pressed into soft mud. The lamps bob and turn. Each one carries a message, a prayer, a hope. You let yours go, just a small vessel, unmarked, unspectacular. But it drifts steadily, like it knows the way. Beside you, Sumerian whispers, "Do you think they reach the gods?" You shake your head. "I think they reach us." In your final duty of the day, you sit alone by lantern light and carve the month's closing record. Your stylus moves slower now, not from fatigue but from reverence. All tasks recorded, all names preserved, ledger complete. No errors of note. Rain came, rain passed, the clay held. You pause, then at the very bottom, you add one last line. "Let whoever finds this know we tried." You press your seal into the wet clay. A perfect circle, a simple truth. Outward count 1 or 8, 9, wind down 300 words. And now the room quiets. The lamps burn low. The city of sleeps. The ledgers have been stacked. The styluses have been washed and set aside. Even the goats, those soft-footed agents of chaos, have settled down under the stars. You sit back in your chair still slightly wobbly, despite all your best efforts, and close your eyes. You feel the warmth of the clay tablet resting near your hand, the faint ache in your fingers from a day's work well done. There's something about this stillness, not empty, full of breath, full of the soft hum of time passing around you, full of the quiet pride that comes from being invisible but essential. Somewhere deep in the archive, a child's name remains where you wrote it. A shipment of barley is correctly logged. A ceremony's chaos is captured in neat, evenly spaced lines. You're not a hero. You're not remembered in songs. But you mattered, and so did your work. The clay holds even when memory does not. You rest your head back. Let your breathing slow, and listen to the silent, steady turning of a world you helped hold together. One number at a time, one wedge at a time. One small, quiet act of order in a world that never stops shifting. Sleep scribe. The work is done. The record remains. End of script. Sweet dreams.